Okay, so this is going to be a recap video on my experimentation with Ambush Ignite. Lessons learned, things to watch out for, things to be aware of. At this point, we are using Ambush Ignite. We use Static Strike, which is great. Ambush, which is actually working pretty well. Our cooldown on this thing is 2.5 seconds, and our duration on Static Strike is about 4.5, 4.3. So that means that our Static Strike stays up. Our Static Strike keeps the benefit of Ambush, which means our Static Strike has a very, well, it crits 100% of the time, and that creates a lot of ignites. We then use Ignite Proliferation. We have Chainbreaker, which is maintained full rage by virtue of the fact that we don't do much. Right, our APM is like 40 something. Because the only thing we really do is on occasion we ambush and then we static strike, which is 2 attacks. This costs 4 rage, this costs 11 rage, that's 15 rage every 4 or 5 seconds. Well, that's maintained by Chainbreaker out of the box. So you have maximum rage. Pretty nice. We do run Infernal Cry, which costs 6 rage, and Flammability, which costs 3 rage, and Steel Skin, which costs 3 rage. I think we have a little bit of mana regeneration. That would probably be miscellaneous. Mana gain on kill. Or is it on defense? No idea. I think we have 20% increased mana regen. So that's just not a whole lot. But just because we don't do much, we have enough to sustain our abilities. Our flask skill duration is 45% increased. Very useful. Flask duration 16%. And then we have flask charges used minus 10%, flask charges gained. This is really more like plus 60%. So we don't have an insane investment in our flasks. We have 3 flasks which are used when full. This one is 5 charges on hit, used when full, needs 40 charges. This takes a while. We have this guy which triggers every other hit, because it's 6 charges whenever you're hit and 15 charges to trigger. And this guy is 7 charges when we're hit and 20 charges to trigger. So if we get hit twice, that's 14 charges. We need 18 charges because of the minus 10 here. And we get about 50% increase, so every other hit we should trigger this guy as well. So this is where a lot of our sustain comes from, and other than that we're just evasion based. Yeah, let's take a quick peek at the gear. We have a energy blade. It's a pretty good lightning weapon if you are doing lightning based ignites. Hyrion's Fury, probably better. Right, this is a lot of investment to get 900 top end damage, where this thing has 650 top end damage, although this is almost a perfect roll. We are getting our energy shield from life as percentage of life as maximum energy shield. We get it from our chest, we get it from the tree, and we get it from our belt. We are using debilitation gauntlets. Ambush is an exerted attack. It is not a war cry, so profit. And it's a movement skill, so we get 40% increased cooldown recovery rate out of our boots. The problem is that the ritual bases got taken behind the shed a bit with the new expansion, right? Because these influences, which I haven't really done anything with yet, or these new, whatever you call them, you can't use them on these gloves or boots because then you lose their implicits, which sucks. Anyway, helmets, life, accuracy. We have 2 tier 2 accuracy rolls, so pretty happy with that. Amulet, damage over time, critical multiplier, some energy shield, some life, some lightning damage with attacks. Amulet is amazing. Ring has some int, which you don't care about. Some life, 77 life, really good. Some recoup and elemental damage with attacks. It's a fine ring. It's like a 3-stat ring. And then we have Stormfire, which allows all of our stuff to ignite. Let's take a quick peek at the passives, where we're at. We have not a whole lot going on here. Providing this character is becoming a little bit difficult. Just as a heads up, like I get import errors when I try to import this character into Path of Building. Probably Energy Blade, but also Path of Building doesn't respect ambush, so it doesn't work very well. So yeah, Perfect Agony. Lots of benefits from this because it applies a crit multi on damage over time. We do get 30% less damage on our hits. So this is a bit of investment, but the end result is that our ignites are pretty potent. Chainbreaker in this area really fixes our strength. So if I take this out, that's 110 strength that we get from this one jewel. Pretty good. That's because we like a lot of stuff in here. We need some life leech. Ideally I would have rolled this on a flask, but I ran out of alterations after a couple of hundred. We want Dire Torment, right? Because it is multiplier for ailments from critical strikes, which all of our ailments are. Mana Reservation, Life and Evasion, Energy Shield and Evasion, right? We are hybrid, we want both of these things. So yeah, the chain breaker down here, which gives us 3 rage a second, but all my skills cost plus 3 rage. Fantastic. This really made the build significantly better just because of fixing stats and everything else. Over here we are picking up 3% of max life as maximum energy shield. We use Let's Shade. I think this is working really well on Pathfinder. Right, Pathfinders don't have immunity from ailments. We just get rid of them very quickly. Especially with flasks that gain charges when you're hit and trigger when full. That means that we strip off our ailments very quickly, and that also means that we have a lot of benefit from the Let's Shade, right? Because the duration doesn't apply to us anymore, because we remove it anyway. And we really just have the benefit of 50% less damage over time taken if you start taking damage over time in the past second. We're also pretty mobile, so we step in stuff, and this effectively prevents half of the damage from the stuff. So really kind of pleased how this is working out. And we also use Temporal Rift. Temporal Rift is kind of like a healing potion. If we have an oopsie and we don't have enough life, we just hit this button and we zap back. Really impressed with Temporal Rift. Takes some getting used to, but it makes running a set of flasks much better. So let's take a moment to go through a map, and if the map is not pleasant, then we will do something else. 100 quant, tier 13, whatever. Should be fine. Probably isn't. We have 2 flasks we have to trigger manually because they are refreshed at the end of flask effect. So we got stunned. Bad. Alright, so there we go. As soon as we actually manage to get our hit off, we're doing pretty good. And we are getting bogged down really bad in here. Wow. That's shockingly bad. So one of the problems that is glaringly obvious right now is that if you do not kill things fast enough, your character sucks. That is one of the big issues with Ignite-based builds, which really means that you need a lot of damage for things to feel well. And what we're seeing here is that although we can kind of do... oh, come on. We can kind of do tier 13-ish. And in reality, it's sketch at best. And we're ignoring those guys because there's just no way I'm gonna have the DPS to really deal with them right now. Not on this map, not with these curses in effect and everything else. If you had better flasks, then you wouldn't have to worry about that. I don't, so I have to worry about that. And that's like, you know, it does show off the problem with the gameplay. Alright, so what was on here that murdered me? Vulnerability and Enfeeble. Vulnerability shouldn't do much, but Enfeeble is a massive issue. Because once your DPS goes too low, everything falls apart. So that's also kind of illustrative of where this character starts to falter. Because we don't really have much left on the map for like improving our character. There's just not a whole lot we can do. A lot of these items are pretty good. This is as much life as we're gonna get on this thing. This is a close to a perfect roll. Movement speed and life, I mean, this could be better, but we really want this recovery, cooldown recovery rate. This is unique. This is really good. This is pretty good. It's gonna be hard to improve this gear. So let's talk about where this character falls apart and what we learned. So first of all, things that went well. Lightning-based ignites worked pretty well. Right, the wild ranges on lightning attacks really help you do pretty decent damage. Pretty happy with that part, right? Because the biggest ignite is what counts. But the ranges are pretty wild. Ambush plus Chainbreaker. Right, the cadence of these two abilities works out amazingly well. Ambush plus Static Strike works out amazingly well. If you do enough damage, or your damage over time, maps are super easy because you just walk through things, on occasion you ambush and everything dies. On this map, we saw that our damage wasn't high enough, and as soon as things live too long, you get bogged down. I wonder if I think I take my other two flasks. So things didn't go well. Cold-based ignites. We crit, which means that our cold-based ignites also freeze, which means he shatter. And shattering ruins our ignites. Chaos-based ignites are just a nightmare. Getting all your damage into the chaos there's just not a good way of doing it. Maybe if you have like super high-end gear, this might be an option, but for, you know, the gear I'm talking about right now, which is probably like 30 chaos worth, no way in hell. Like even the amulet to get chaos-based ignites is probably more than the rest of this gear put together. Fire-based ignite. So the problem with fire-based ignite is we do not get access to elemental equilibrium, and our elemental equilibrium is negative 30 fire resistance. Right, so that's a pretty big deal. And the other thing that isn't really worth it is energy blade. Right, this thing with a lot of investment on my gear and on my tree does 50% more top-end damage than Hion's Fury, assuming we don't convert. Right, we go from 650 top-end to 920 top-end. It's not even 50%. That's a lot of investment. Like the cool thing with Energy Blade is that you can, especially early on leagues, you can use really bad 6-links. And have a 6-link. but the investment to get your damage out of that is huge. Plus we get stunned all the time because we're hybrid. Yay. So that's one of the things that's miserable. Alright, so let's talk about melee ignite and what's the problem with melee ignite. So, ignite doesn't care about your hit damage. Okay. But a lot of melee supports do care about your hit damage. And funny enough, cruelty support cares about your hit damage. Right? Fortify support really cares about your hit damage. Which means that if we make our ignites with lightning and we don't have any penetration for lightning, our hits are garbage. And if we combine then deadly ailments, our hits are really bad. And of course we also have perfect agony, which also ruins our hit damage. Right? Melee based ignites, because increasing your damage over time ruins your hit based damage, is fine. Except that a bunch of the melee supports care about your hit based damage. Right? Like you're effectively playing melee, you're running through packs of mobs, but you can't use fortify. Because fortify stacks just never get up high enough to be worth a damn. That is a big frustration that you figure out if you try to go down this path. And I think that is something that might see changes in the future. Right? So if they do a pass-through on some of these support gems, like people have been bitching about fortify support. Like if they start looking at some of these smaller hit-based effects and making them more relevant for their secondary effects, yay. But if you're going to go hit-based, then you're not damage over time based, and if you go hit based, you want penetration, and if you're gonna go penetration, it's really hard just to say like omniscience, yay, done. Okay, and omniscience would be really good, right? Because well, omniscience is busted as hell, but it solves our stats because we have a bunch of stun gems. And it solves our penetration. But yeah, I was trying to go ignite. And in the end, ambush plus ignite is... It doesn't work. And a lot of that's coming down to... It doesn't work because melee ignite has structural issues with how skills that support melee work in combination with, or the supports that work on melee work in combination with ignites. And that's a structural issue. We're not going to fix that. So it's probably not going to change anytime soon. So there's things we can try in the future, is to say, okay, we're going to use Chainbreaker, Ambush, Static Strike. And then we can throw out the ignite, but when we don't have the ignite, we don't have the clear. And I understand that what we just saw, the clear, was pitiful. Partially because a couple of unlucky stuns. Actually, stuns happen all the time. But when you get stunned, you just don't get your zappy beams up. You really need those zappy beams to do a lot of work, right? And the beams can have 5 targets? 5 targets. Right, so once you start running around every point whatever seconds, 0.33 seconds, 5 targets get hit. Well, that's not enough if you're trying to clear with a massive damage range. Right, because of those 5 targets, half of them get hit with damage that is completely substantial because you have low rolls. So, every point whatever 0.33 seconds, you hit 3 targets with real damage, and they'll die. If you don't chain an ignite off of that or something else, and this could be Herald of Ash maybe, that improves your clear, you're gonna have problems. Right, so one of the ways to possibly handle this is to give them chains. So we go from 5 targets to 10 targets, adding some AoE, right? Because you need to be really in the middle of the pack to get 5 targets to begin with. And then adding in Herald of Ash, so that your high rolls on the trash mobs will just clear everything off. That's one of the ways to possibly handle this. And then this might become a hit-based build, right? And if you go a hit-based build, then the passive tree changes drastically, your gearing changes drastically, we no longer need Stormfire, which opens up our ring slots. I don't know. Finding an amulet is easier. The only thing you care about is crit multi, lightning damage to attacks, things like that. Might be a lot easier. We did for a while run Vessel of Vinctar. If you're playing a Pathfinder and you want to run Vessel of Vinctar, I've seen some weird behavior with it, right? Because with the Ascendancy nodes, you assume that when you hit Vessel of Vinctar, you get shocked, but you use the flask, so therefore your shock goes away. That's usually true. But usually true gets you killed, because when it isn't true, it's a 50% shock on your character. So quite often I look at like replay footage and I'm like, wait, I have a 50% shock on me, right? Because I watch like the post-death clips that you can set up. Yeah. I don't know what the conditions are. I've seen it in the Azure Mines a bunch, where I'm like in the mine hideout, like where Nico hangs out, and I have like a 50% shock on me. I'm like, what's going on? And it's gone. But even if it's there for a very small amount of time, that's really bad. So that's a lot of investment. Rolling flasks with all the tiers of modifiers is a nightmare. Oh my god. It's so many alterations. So yeah, that's also a lesson learned, I guess. I think that kind of wraps it up for this character. I'll take another peek in this map. Let's see if we can make it look a little bit better, because it's not that bad. Oh, this guy has the vines. Why not? Alright. So the vines made things sad. Totems are nice because you can just ambush them and get your zappy beams up. They're very easy to hit. And yeah, these rare packs, like you can see, they just take a little bit too long to effectively murder. On occasion, you see a little bit of life, of a energy shield. That's where we got a stun, and stuns are bad. And when we get energy shield, that helps out a lot. I think we're also running negative 33 chaos res, so that's, I'm sure, not doing us any favors on this map. We're not gonna do Yun, because we can pretty much tell from what's happening out here that it's not gonna go well in there. Melee range. Melee range is huge. Like, you make these single attacks, and when you make these single attacks, it's pretty bad. I think what happened there is I hit twice. I'm watching the replay. Oh, you can see the replay too. Awesome. So when you hit twice, like you see the blade go like that and like that, you just lost the benefits from your ambush. right, which is part of the reason why I have ambush and static strike on keybinds rather than anything else. Anyway, so this is the end of this character. It's been a lot of fun to do. It's been a lot of fun to experiment with. But in the end, the structural issues that we're encountering are not really surmountable. There isn't much gear upgrades I can hope for. And it's like low red maps is kind of where it tops out, even with buying a couple items off of trade. Now, you know, low red maps, 30 chaos. I think this was like, I mean, I socketed and linked it myself, but it's like 8 chaos or something I paid for this guy, for the life roll, and for the max life energy shield. 4 or 5 chaos for the gloves, the belt, like 8 chaos for this guy, a couple of chaos for Stormfire, and 2 chaos for this amulet. Oh, 5 chaos for this. So maybe like 40 chaos. 40 chaos for low rep maps, not bad. You know, there's something to be said for that. The problem is, what am I going to improve? Right? Like, if I'm going to spend an Exalted Orb, I can improve my flasks. My flasks are pretty awful. But that's about it. These gloves have tier 1 life, I believe. Tier 1 life, tier 2 and tier 1 life. You're probably not going to get much better life on this. We're going to get better chaos resist, which probably would have saved our ass on that map because of the little construct shooting us. But there isn't a whole lot else that I think can happen with this character to make a substantial difference. So, if you're looking at going this route, don't go Ignite. Don't go Melee Ignite. If you are going to go Ambush, do look at Static Strike, do look at Chainbreaker. And yeah, I think that is kind of where we're going to leave it off.